And it is time once again for another AEW Dynamite review here on the MrWarrenHayes Show. Hello, how you doing? I'm Warren, and yes, I'm back. I'm officially back. I am back from vacationing, from going to All in Texas, of course, from exploring the American South and whatnot. I am officially back in the saddle. This is the point where everything goes back to normal, I guess, and we're going to be back on the reg doing everything. Hope you didn't miss me too much. If you did, well, you need friends. But but no, honestly, like, I'm flattered. Don't get me wrong, but you still need friends. So look, I've missed the past couple of Dynamites for multiple reasons. Just vacation stuff and whatnot, and I hadn't seen Kristen in a while as well. My lovely fiance down there in Wisconsin. So I really did maximize the amount of time I wanted to spend with her. And that meant, well, quite unfortunately, that I had to sort of cut into the reviews and whatnot. But I still watched Dynamite, and I still got around to posting my review of All in Texas, which is available on the YouTube channel if you want to check that out. It's it's hastily put together. I didn't have access to the full Warren Hayes production facilities like I usually do. So the video and the video edit, the audio, it might be a little rougher, but it still does the job. So, if you didn't see it go by, if you thought that's really the only thing I posted while I was on vacation, honestly. And I really did want to get it out. Seeing that I was there and so on and so forth, I felt like there was something good there. So go check that out. Go enjoy it if you haven't already. But nonetheless, I have been watching Dynamite. I have been keeping up, mostly with Dynamite. Got a bit of Collision. Collision sort of fell to the wayside a little bit, but nonetheless, I have been I've been up to date on the Dynamites since, and I think this is like the second Dynamite since, right? So the second Dynamite since All In is what I'm trying to say. So yeah, we'll be I'm completely up to date. I'm following everything that's going on. I thought last week's Dynamite was very good. I thought it was a very good return show, and it does feel like we're going off into where it did feel like we were kicking off a new era in AEW, and last night's episode I enjoyed tremendously as well. Look, it's the ongoing, continuing story, which is fine, but also makes you sound like a broken record when you do these reviews week after week. Is that this was another very good episode of AEW Dynamite. There's very little to get nasty at or pick apart. Although there are a couple of things that I do want to that I do feel I need to get into this week. But hey, let's start by talking about the business side of things here for this show number 3 of the residency there at the Aragon Ballroom in Chicago, Illinois, that happened on July 23rd, 2025. 1,144 tickets were distributed. That is filled to the setup capacity. I think the Aragon Ballroom can hold something like 5,000 people. Obviously, there's a lot of production kills and so on and so forth. So I don't know what the actual capacity is, but the setup for last night's show was 1,144, and they gave out every ticket. There was, if you waited too late, you couldn't get in. And honestly, it's been a while since we've heard one of these situations with AEW where if you waited till the last moment, you couldn't get into the show. That was kind of a new thing. It's it's something that used to be, I wouldn't say frequent, but would be much more of a norm. Whereas now the idea is you can wait as long as you like to get your tickets to AEW. It's not going to sell out. So usually you wait till at least, for me, and I know a lot of people who do frequent AEW shows do the same thing. They really wait till the last possible moment to pick up some tickets at some really ridiculous prices, ridiculously low is what I mean. And look, if you did that for Chicago for the show last night, it didn't work out for you. And it probably won't work out for you next week, seeing that they announced Hangman versus Mox 3 last night which is a preposterous, like out of the blue, out of nowhere main event for a Dynamite, which don't get me wrong, I am 100% into. I am 100% into this, and I'm very excited, and it makes Dynamite next week appointment viewing. It 100% does, because you're going to get Hangman's first big defense against the guy that he just, against the guy he just beat for. Sure, that's fine. It's a rematch. Hangman is unlikely to lose the title again. Let's be completely frank here. But doing it again against Mox I think is a really good idea. And what I'm looking forward to in this match next week, I'm already talking about next week and I haven't even covered this week, but yeah, bear with me. What I'm looking forward to the most is for these two guys to have the physical match that I hoped they were going to have at All In, which wasn't quite it. If you listen to my review, I talk about it more in length, and I don't want to get back into that. But essentially, my thought was it was a really good match, but I was really expecting the main event, the World Championship title match, to really be something violent and brutal, and where that was just going to physically be the thing that everyone was craving for, just this huge brawl, this drag out battle, which it wasn't. It was something else, which was good. Don't get me wrong. I'm personally, like, I'm mostly talking from a personal purview here, which is essentially what reviewers do, of course. But I'm hoping that next week, the match we're going to get with everyone barred from ringside is going to be the one-on-one match that I hoped to get at All In between Hangman and Mox. Does that make sense? And please don't misconstrue me. I'm not belittling what happened at All In. I thought it was a really good match. I thought it was great, actually. For multiple reasons, and the environment, the everything coming together, like it worked. Okay, as a main event, it worked. As a wrestling match, I would have hoped for something else, and maybe this is what we're gonna get. And so going into that match next week, I cannot but wonder, or hope, I should say, I cannot but hope that we are going to get a gritty. A gritty hard knocks brawl, right? Unless suddenly we do away with the rules, which I don't think will be the case. I don't think we're going to go necessarily Texas Death. I think I'm expecting to be fully entertained on that aspect, where they're going to pull out like this incredibly brutal brawl. I think I've said this a couple of times, and I think you understand the point. Because I think Hangman will benefit from this. I think having the champ be in this type of situation is a good idea. And Mox really does feel reinvigorated. I think ever since the rematch with Cope, really, on Dynamite, I feel like Jon Moxley has that little swagger back, right? He's got that little hinge that makes Mox so fucking great, and at the same time so fucking cool, where he becomes this utterly believable ass kicker, right? And Hangman mentioned it in his short promo against Mox last night. He said, I want to fight the Mox that carried this company on his back for the better part of the past 6 years, which as the kids say, is spitting truths. That's for sure. And but at the same time, like, he wants that Mox, and I think we're seeing that Mox back again. I think he was completely deflated with the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship run. I don't think Mox is particularly proud of his run with the top belt in New Japan. There's multiple reasons, of course. I think quality of opponent is probably something that really, got to him. I don't think he had a stellar run in any way, shape, or form. even though I think he probably got one of the best matches out of Shota Umino he could. There was a lot of chatter around that. I don't think that necessarily affects him. I don't think Jon Moxley is the type of guy who sits around Twitter and reads comments all day. I don't think. But I don't think his championship amongst fans, both, amongst fans of New Japan, both in the East and the West, I don't think it was necessarily accepted. I don't think everyone was necessarily into it and thought it was, maybe not a great idea. And, it was in the midst of the Brochacho stuff, which, knowing Jon Moxley and the type of wrestling that he likes and this type of stuff that he wants to do, I think that era of AEW absolutely must have deflated his balloon for a significant amount of time. I've heard stuff, from the dark corners of wrestling chat rooms. I've heard, some rumors regarding Mox and how displeased he was at that period. And a lot of people saw the Death Riders thing as a make good, as sort of like to get Jon Moxley back into the mix, doing things that he feels this company and himself should be doing. And he did to a degree. I think it's fair to say at this point that the Death Riders angle is a mixed bag, but I 100% maintain that since the second half of the Cope feud, I think the Death Riders angle, where it pivoted from attempting to be this, Galactus style, villain type thing, overseeing the entire promotion and wrestling for the soul of AEW and all that shit. The pivot from that to just being, a good old fashioned unit of kick-ass wrestlers who just want to be shitty and do shitty things and be shitty to people. I think that pivot there helped it tremendously. I thought it got it back on track, and this is where we are now. This is where we're at. We're with Mox in one of the best spots that he's been in a long time. I think he's the most interesting that he's been in a long time, and he did so much work at All In to make sure that Adam Page looked great and got over, and to make the wrestling parts of that match scintillating, that it's hard to not stand back and say, goddamn, like Jon Moxley always coming out and showing up for the big time moments, right? Every single fucking time. And now, well, we're still in the as far as the championship, the world championship goes, we're still in the orbit of the Death Riders. And this is going to lead us to the big third match between Mox and Page, which I highly suspect Page is going to win, and will be the definitive, like the definitive win. Like, he will have beaten. Excuse me, what the hell? I guess it's digestion time, folks. He will have defeated Jon Moxley three times in 3 encounters, right? 3 encounters, 3 wins by the Hangman. So you could not have a more definitive end to this rivalry, or a more definitive winner here at the very least than Hangman Page. When, in 30 years we look back at this and we're retrospecting people's careers. Let's say we're retrospecting Jon Moxley's career, which I feel is going to come to fruition earlier than Hangman's. Although, I'm talking through my ass here. They really not really, come to think of it. Never mind. Skip that part. We're leaving it in just for posterity's sake, just to show that I'm, how much these buffoon thoughts can go through my head sometimes. But when we're retrospecting these people's careers in about 30 years, we're going to look back at this record, and we're going to say, you know what, Hangman Page was the guy Jon Moxley just could not overcome. This was the guy that Mox did not have an answer for. And when you think about how everything went down at All In, and you think about the promo that happened the week before, no, 2 weeks before, when Hangman challenged him to the Texas Death Match, right? When Hangman challenged him to the Texas Death Match, you had Jon Moxley in the ring saying, "You're never going to beat me. You don't have what it takes." And everyone's sort of, slapping their skulls, going, "Why the fuck is he saying this?" Hangman is the king of the style is the king of of that style of match, is what I'm trying to say. And on top of that, he's beaten them before with that style of match, and it was clearly an attempt for Mox to try and get into Hangman's head and prey off his insecurities, because not Hangman, but Mox, deep inside knew at that point, I should say, that he cannot beat Hangman in a Texas Death, and he probably can't beat Hangman. So now his only trick that he had up his sleeve was to try and prey on Hangman's insecurities, his issues with self-confidence. Will I be able to do it? And so on and so forth. That's all he had to try and get into Hangman's head. And it turns out that, Mox was right in his feelings. He knew deep down that he couldn't beat Hangman, especially in the Texas Death context, and he didn't. So what's he got to lose here? What does he have to lose here? And like Hangman said, after he challenged him, I said, "You don't need to answer. I already know your response is yes." Right? These guys understand how each other guy ticks. Hangman probably more than Mox does, because Mox thought he had figured it out. Mox thought he had figured out Hangman was like, "Well, look, I'll just plant seeds of doubt as to whether he can do it or not, because Hangman's a pussy." That's essentially what he was saying, because he's a weak-willed, weak of spirit, right, type of dude, and I'm going to prey on that. And it didn't turn out that way, because it's not the same Hangman that we've seen from over the past year or so. It's just not the same Hangman. And that blew up in Mox's face. Now Mox probably feels a little more confident, because now he knows what kind of Hangman he has to deal with, and probably feels a little better about it, but it's not going to work out. And besides, I still think that all of these shenanigans, all of these things that are, since Hangman is still involved and the Death Riders are still involved, and now you've got, we haven't seen the Bucks, but since All In, since last week, I should say, but all of them are still gravitating around. They're all still gravitating around each other. This is all leading to blood and guts, right? We're going to get a blood and guts match on the way to Forbidden Door. Like we still got like a full month. I think there is going to be a stop along the way that is going to be a blood and guts match, and it's going to involve all of these good folks. It's going to involve the Death Riders. It's going to involve Hangman, and you have Swerve Strickland, who's involved with Okada, and that feels out of that orbit. It doesn't feel like all that connected. I think the connection with Hangman is a little more tenuous than if let's say Will Ospreay was still involved. Then you might see it a little more. I can't help but feel that we're going that way. Samoa Joe, the Ops, they still have. I'm assuming they still have some outstanding issues, right? Samoa Joe is out because of injury, but in reality, he's just doing a little press tour for Twisted Metal, so he'll be back sooner than later. I don't know. I kind of feel this is all going to come together fairly easily, if that makes sense. But listen, we're talking about this off of the final promo of the show last night, and I sincerely think that next week I think it was a great call to do it. I think it was a great call to put it on TV. It's probably going to end a little fishy. I'd like Hangman to get a definitive clean win, and I don't know how fishy you can get with everyone barred from ringside, but I can't shake the feeling. I would like Hangman to win clean. That's what I'd like. That's what I'd prefer, and I hope that's the angle they go down, but I can't shake the feeling that they might just be setting this up for an angle to continue the build, the slow bubbling build to not Forbidden Door, to Blood and Guts. I'm curious to see how all of this is going to go down. So yeah, why don't we just go ahead? Let's dive right into to the episode of Dynamite last night. We've talked up and down about a bunch of other stuff, and now it's time to really get into the nitty gritty. Let's break down last night's show. The show started off with a cold open, going through all the matches of the evening, and also announcing that there is a tag team title eliminator tournament to get a shot at the Hurt Business and the AEW World Tag Team titles. And Warren, I didn't watch last night's episode of Dynamite. That's so exciting. I love tournament wrestling. Oh, that's great. So Warren, why don't you? I can't wait. Who are the teams who are involved in this championship tournament? I don't know, because which is the wildest thing. You announce a tournament and you say it's starting tonight, but outside of the teams wrestling tonight, there is no one on the board. There are no brackets. There is zero zilch, no one involved in this tournament outside of, like I said, the people who are wrestling in the first round of the tournament on Dynamite, which are FTR and Jet Speed. Now, I've heard that the Guns were supposed to be in this tournament, but Colton got hurt again. This kid's snake bitten. This is ridiculous, right? But Colton Gunn was supposed to, the Guns were supposed to be in it. Colton got injured. So now the brackets sort of need retooling. And I'm like, really? How detrimental were the Guns to this tournament? And also, it's kind of weird. Look, outside of them winning the tournament, which could have been possible because they received some really good reactions. Why would you need to blank out the rest of your tournament because one tag team bowed out? You have to have other people. You have to have other people ready to go, all set up and ready to go. Like it doesn't make sense to me. It's kind of preposterous when you think about it. It's not like, look, I don't want to get too deep into it, but on that and look, it's a viable enough answer to say, look, we've got an X team, right? You could still throw up on the board the team they were supposed to fight, and then you have an X there, right? And then you'll announce the X on the day and whatever, and who cares, right? That I think it's possible. What this worries me, what makes me worried in this circumstance here, is that this feels a lot like some old booking patterns from Tony Khan that sort of slapdashes stuff together and really we're going to present it like this and the rest we'll figure it out as we go along the way. And that is not something I particularly enjoy. I'm not really into that kind of stuff. And it is often generated, confusion, maybe some disinterest, maybe also not necessarily the best results in these types of situations where things feel hurried. One of the biggest reasons I think that AEW has been working out so well for the past, since the start of the year or close to, let's say since February, is the idea that you do feel that there is a plan. You do feel that things have been thought out for weeks in advance when it comes to storylines, angles, matches. It doesn't feel like just thrown together last minute. And this feels thrown together last minute to the point where it's like, we don't know what to do. It's almost as if Tony walked into the office on the day of Dynamite and slapped his hands together and said, "We're having a tournament." And everyone's like, "What? We're having a tag team tournament?" And they couldn't work out like who the teams were on time. And I'm not super excited about. This, I might be completely off, and hopefully I am. Hopefully it's all due to Colton's injury that he had to rethink his brackets. But I can't help but get, flashbacks of the past when AEW would just throw things at the wall and then see what happens type of situation. I really hope this is not the circumstance here. Anyway, we get Hangman, who's on his way to his match against Wheeler Yuta to open the show, and he gets interrupted by Renee Paquette walking by, and he says basically that he's going in there to fight for Colt Cabana, because Renee is like, look, you just fought the Death Riders 2 weeks ago. The hell are you doing, man? And he says, look, Colt Cabana got completely destroyed on Collision last week, and I'm not going to stand for this. So I'm going to go teach them a lesson. I'm going to go teach the Death Riders a lesson, and I will not be responsible for what happens to Wheeler Yuta. And I like this little angle here, literally like this angle as opposed to the angle, like the curve that's taken here, because Hangman did say he wanted to be the leader, he wanted to be the champion, he wanted to, bring AEW back to what it was, and so on. Like everything that was part of his discourse leading up to the match with Moxley was him becoming the leader that everyone deserved. So if he sees someone in their locker room being disrespected like this, getting treated like Colt Cabana did last week, well, on the most recent episode of Collision, then yeah, like it makes sense then for the locker room leader to go, you know what, this shit sucks, I'm not gonna stand for it, and then he laces up his boots and does something about it. So it makes sense on that end, but before he can fully walk away to the ring, he gets accosted by MJF, hanging on to his contract, and he basically says, I am going to challenge you for this. I'm going to win this title without using my contract. And it's been firmly established in this show, by the way, that these contracts are indeed cash-ins. They're money in the banks again. We're doing this again, folks. We're doing it again. We did not learn from the Christian Cage run with the cash-in on how much of a terrible idea they are. And we are going to turn around and pull out these contracts again and use them as cash-ins. Athena said so as much later in the evening, and Max is here saying, I don't need to use this. I can challenge you and you're going to say yes. And I'm like, what the fuck are we doing here? This is so annoying and stupid, and everything is annoying about it. I hate the fucking cash-ins. I hate them. I hate them in AEW. I hate them in WWE. I hate them everywhere. I think it's a bad idea. I think there's no good booking that comes out of it. And everything about it annoys me. The way they walk around with the steel clipboards and the way they hold them up to the camera, both MJF and Athena, to make sure that everyone sees, and it's written in big old, big fonts that it's a championship contract with the title belt. It's all so fucking annoying. It's all so annoying. And it's even more annoying, I think, in this circumstance here. As a parenthesis, I ended up watching Io Shirai versus Rhea Ripley from the Evolution show, right? I ended up watching it because everyone around me was raving about it, was hooting and hollering about how great of a match it was, and then I watched it and I was super into it, and then Naomi did her fucking cash in, right? The women are they've been beating each other up for the better part of 20 minutes in a legitimately awesome match. Like there's nothing you can say bad about. Like if I knew WWE was putting on these types of matches on the reg, I'd probably watch a little more. I'd probably be more into it. But this was the fluke of the year, right? As far as WWE goes. And it was a legitimately awesome match until the fucking finish, when Naomi runs in, when both women have been beating each other up for about 20 minutes. They hit some big moves. And then she runs in and does the fucking cash in and wins off of Io Shirai in the cheapest, most disgusting, stupid way that completely ruins an otherwise excellent match. And I am not even kidding. A terrific, awesome, excellent match where Rhea Ripley, big match Rhea, 100% shows up and is tearing the house down with Io Shirai, who's using her as a base to do some great stuff. An excellent pro wrestling match, smartly done, with a ref bump. That with great psychology, the ref bump happens in the match, and instead of pulling out the belt shots and all that, they're like, no, let's go fucking fight in the audience instead. Let's take this to the audience, which leads to a great dive by Io Shirai off of some road cases. It's all great. And then this comes in and ruins the match. And here's the thing that's most annoying. Here's the thing that really fucking annoys me, okay? The match is ruined. It's legitimately ruined. I'm sitting there watching this with Kristen, back home with her at her place in Wisconsin, and I stand up from my seat. I point both of my hands to the television set. I'm doing one of these. I'm going, what the fuck is happening here? Why would they ruin a perfectly great match? And the audience, this is the thing, the audience, they hear Naomi's music play and they get up on their feet and they're cheering. And I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with these people? Why are you excited about this happening here? Happening in this circumstance, this great match. They're up on their feet, they're cheering, and Naomi's a heel. But they're cheering. They love it. They're morons, is what they are. So I finished that match with the greatest distaste in my mouth. That just compounds my absolute disgust at cash-ins, right? And I'm like, and I say to myself, I am right to not be watching this fucking company where they are delivering a top tier, a legitimate, up until that point, a legitimate match of the year contender that was just swept away. Whatever greatness you want to tack onto it, still an excellent match, but by God, that finish just fucks everything up. And I'm like, well, this is why I don't watch anymore. This is it. This is why. And I don't understand why you would be excited about someone running in to ruin an exciting match. And so, compounded with that on top of it, the recency of this travesty, I guess, happening just leads into my absolute disdain of AEW deciding to do cash-ins again. When the cash-in for Christian Cage last year, well, earlier this year, in fact, but all the time that he held it was just ended up being such a burden for booking for the company. You could tell they didn't know how to deal with it. They had to shoehorn him into stuff to make people see that they still knew that Christian Cage still had the contract. And it's just a bad decision. It's just a terrible decision. I thought they would have learned from that experience there and be like, you know what? Let's just let's just set up contract dates. They signed the contract, and MJF versus Paige at this pay-per-view, and Athena versus Tony Storm at this pay-per-view. And that's that, right? But no, it's a cash-in element, and it's really fucking annoying. And I wish AEW didn't do it. I wish they just left that to WWE, because it's a WWE thing that their fans gobble up because they're the dumbest fans on earth. And they proved it to me with the Rhea Io thing, where they should have been groaning and moaning and booing, but instead they were excited at the prospect of a cash-in. And it fucking sucks. It fucking sucks. Every cash-in fucking sucks. You can point out to, Seth Rollins. Okay. Like, of course, we're all going to go to the one or two that worked out tremendously, and that ended up creating a star, and that was, really well booked. Everyone seems to have forgotten the Big E debacle, right? Everyone seems to have forgotten that. But it doesn't matter because the cash-in is so cool because it's a moment. It's all these fucking moments. This is what I don't want in AEW. I want the wrestling. I don't want gimmicks that belong to other people that clearly belong somewhere else, because it doesn't make sense and it's annoying and it breaks the flow of a match. It's just terrible. If I'm MJF next week or whenever, I pick up a pen and I sign the dotted line. I'm like, all right, I'm challenging you for the belt at All Out. Excuse me. There you go. Think I'm a child or whatever, Okay, I'm doing it All Out. But please, oh God, please, I never want to hear that. And now they changed the terminology. They don't call it a cash-in. They're like, it's executable. It's an executable contract, something like that. And I'm like, oh, come on now. Now we're starting to get into Vince territory where we start just splurging out words to try and say something by using words with multiple syllables to make us sound smarter and so much different than everyone else. No. There's nothing good about it. There's nothing good. Flush it down the toilet. No cash-ins ever. Anyway, back to the show. Hangman defeated Wheeler Yuta in this. Actually, back to the MJF thing. Hangman basically tells MJF, right? It's like, no, you're not going to sucker me into giving you a challenge, into giving you a match for the belt. You're either going to use your contract or earn it, but you're too much of a child to do either. And MJF, of course, did not like that. And we'll get back to it a little later on. Anyway, Adam Page defeated Wheeler Yuta, and Page just gets to the ring and he beats the piss out of Yuta. But yeah, he essentially had his way with him. He did whatever he wanted, clocked him. He hit the buckshot lariat for the win. And after the match, he wraps the chain that he used against Mox. He wraps the chain around his fist and knocks and uses it on Yuta, who bleeds. And he chokes him out while pointing out that, look, none of your Death Rider pals came for you. They don't care about you. They don't give a shit. And they didn't. They did not come. This is not new. This is still, it's not the first time that Yuta has a match and gets beat up and the Death Riders don't come for him. But at the very least, we're watering that seed there just to make sure that everyone remembers. But yeah, just a complete and utter dominant win by the champ, which he should. Wheeler Yuta is not in his lane at all. So this is exactly what needed to be done. Good opener to kick things off. We had Athena and Billy Starks cutting a promo. And Athena is wearing a Shark Week hat. All right. And they hype up the thing about Tony Storm and the burgeoning feud there and whatnot. Anyway, that's it. It's to hype up Billy Stark's match with Tony Storm. Then we get the opening match of the AEW World Tag Team Championship Eliminator Tournament. First match of this tournament where we don't know who any of the participants are outside of these two here. And it turns out FTR defeated Jet Speed in a super terrific match. This match was so much fun. Not only was it fun, it was really good. I think we cannot stress enough how good FTR are as heels. They are just reveling in every second, every moment that they are doing this. It's just tremendous. Jet Speed were great here too. They were absolutely stellar and spectacular. I thought Mike Bailey looked particularly good. Did his acai, I guess an acai senton, onto both of FTR on the floor, which was a tremendous spot. Got the crowd involved. Like the crowd was great crowd again this week, but they were super into this match. It was such a really fun live match. And FTR, so good in the little things about being a heel. Like they really, really do get everything. And you can feel like this is another team that's been re-energized, that's been revitalized with just a little tweak to their creative, and they're off and running here. It was fantastic, and the win in the most heel way possible on top of that, where Dax rolls up Kevin Knight, I believe, and he holds on to Stokely Hathaway's crutch, one of the crutches that he has because he was hurt by Adam Copeland, right? So Dax was holding on to one of the crutches to get the extra leverage for the win, which is, such a goofy heel way to win, but also a great way to win. Like it's such an old school way to do it. I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. Just great work from all around here. It was a tremendous match. And then Stoke gets on the mic, and he has the crutches, and he has like the rib tape on because he ate a spear, right, last week. He has the rib tape on under his tracksuit, and you see a bit of the rib tape. And I thought that was funny. It would have been funnier if he had worn it outside the tracksuit, but hey, Stokely basically gets on the mic, calls Adam Copeland a cancer to AEW. Copeland shows up basically to say, oh yes, I can't approach you guys because there's some, I can't get within 50 feet or whatever the fuck, right? He says, but I got a couple of people who could come in here and who could come in and beat you guys up as opposed to me doing it. And it turns out that he hired the Hurt Syndicate to do it. They come out, they're in full gear, and they attack FTR. They beat them up quite a bit. So I'm a little perplexed here. I'm a little perplexed. I'm not going to lie. I understand that MVP and the Hurt Business are all about, as they like to say, doing business. So if they hear a good offer, they'll consider it and then they'll do it, right? So that's, I'm okay with that. That makes sense. Where it starts to break apart here is on two fronts. The first front being, aren't they heels? Aren't they heels? They're supposed to be heels at the very least, right? A Hurt Business, Adam Copeland's not a heel. So it's a weird alignment. On one end, I understand. But on the other hand, I'm like, well, why would Adam Copeland be teaming up with bad guys, with guys in the locker room that have a bad attitude? I understand. It's purely business, right? It's just business. But then when you add into the mix what happens later on when MJF and the Hurt Business have their little spat, where essentially they tell MJF, we might be skipping ahead a bit, but trust me, it'll make sense in a moment, where the Hurt Business say to MJF when he complains about, where were you guys to back me up? We got to focus on getting my AEW World Championship. And they basically tell him, well, Bobby Lashley basically tells him, look, we are not your lackeys. We're not here to do your bidding. We're a group, we're a team, or whatever the fuck, right? And why? But so you're not lackeys to MJF, but you will be hired to be lackeys for someone else, though. And I think there's a little disconnect there, because I really like the idea of Lashley and Benjamin telling MJF, hey, this isn't you with your former associations, right? This isn't you and Wardlow. We're not here to do your bidding. We're all on the same side here. We're a team to conduct business together. And if it works for us, we'll do it. If it doesn't, well, so be it. Yeah. We're not but essentially putting MJF back into his place, whereas he might have been thinking, oh, well, I've got these guys in the palm of my hand. These are my troops now. Well, they're not troops. They're all equals, essentially. I think that's what I've been trying to say, while stuttering the whole way, which is my brand, quite frankly. That's essentially what he was trying to say there. Whereas Cope coming in, well, it's just business. So he just gave them money and they did it. So the Hurt Business can be hired goons. And I don't know. I don't know. I'm not super into it. I don't think it's necessarily like, I think it's different if you do a match. It's like, look, I need some backup. You guys scratch my back, I scratch yours. Here's an envelope of money. And then they're like, yeah, okay, we'll do it kind of thing. But just coming out to punk out a team that you don't like, I correct me if I'm wrong. It feels a little off-brand for the Hurt Syndicate. So I'm a little divided on that one. Pointing more towards, I really don't like it. I'm really more in that camp than anything else. Anyway, yeah, I mean, look, it was a really good match that ended with a bit of an oddball angle. Of course, it involves Adam Copeland, so the angle wasn't necessarily all that great. Also left enough time for people to sing the Metalingus without the actual track backing them for a little bit, because it would appear that's customary now for Adam Copeland. It's part of his thing. You got to let that happen now. Nick Wayne, Kip Sabian, and Mother Wayne are all there, and they introduce themselves as the Uncaged now. All right. And they said this collision will be their coming out party. All right. Jon Moxley cuts an excellent promo, a pre-tape backstage with Marina Shafir, saying the story isn't over and so on and so forth. And he's going to expose Paige as being an unworthy champion. This is the Mox. When I was talking about earlier, that this is the Mox that we were missing, that was missing. This is him. You can feel it in how he delivers, the look he gives to the camera, the way he stands. It's an entirely, when he's into something, you can feel it. You can absolutely feel it. And I know there's a lot of people who are very, very desperate for Jon Moxley to go back to WWE. And personally, I cannot see that happening. Not when you see how he conducts himself in AEW, especially not after reading his book. I don't see him in any way, shape, or form. Not currently, not with how things stand right now. I absolutely cannot see it. So Will Ospreay comes to the ring to give us an injury update. It sounds, look, he's forlorn. They even cut him arriving at the building looking very downtrodden, trying to keep a stiff upper lip type situation. But it's, you can tell he's distraught. And I'm like, oh, motherfucker. It's worse than we thought. Like, it was supposed to be very simple at first, right? A slight injury. He's banged up, they told us, right? After All In. And then it became, it's a little more serious than we thought. And now I'm like, oh, it's even worse, right? Right? And he comes to the ring and he's got, he's not his usual exuberant self. And, basically runs down being proud of being able to have done his part in bringing the world championship back. He made a promise that he was going to help, and he wanted to push through to get everyone across the finish line. He made a promise to Hangman, he made a promise to Swerve, but mostly made a promise to all the fans. But it turns out he has 2 herniated discs in his neck that are pressing on his spinal cord. He says that it is nonetheless treatable, and that he should be cleared by Forbidden Door. And I'm like, oh my God. So it's really not that bad. It's really not that bad. If he's going to be back in a month, in time for Forbidden Door, what are we doing here with the forlorn faces? And we just got, Adam Cole pulling the same thing just 2 weeks ago, saying, basically saying I may never wrestle again. And now you got Will Ospreay coming out with the long face and whatnot, trying to look strong for the folks. And it's a month. A month? Ah, come on now. All right. Anyway, so he walks away. It's fine. Swerve comes out. They give each other a hug. Everyone's happy, I guess. Happy that it's not as bad as it was. We get a little hype package for the Julia Hart Sky Blue Tekla trio that is apparently forming. All right. Willow Nightingale cuts a promo, basically putting over the idea that things are changing here in AEW now that Hangman won, and that she's coming for big Tex. As in Tekla. Big Tex. All right. I'm into it. Actually, that should be a lot of fun. That's a good little program. That's a good little program. Willow Nightingale and Tekla. I'm into it. Then we have the Hurt Syndicate MJF confrontation that I spoke about already. I don't think we have to revisit that. That leads us to Tony Storm defeating Billy Starks. Why does... And I want to preface this by saying I like Billy Starks, okay? But why does everything that Billy Starks does looks so slow? Why does it all look so slow? It's like she's wrestling through molasses, you know? And I don't understand it. It's like she's in an aquarium. It's like she's doing it underwater. And I don't understand it. And I'm like, where's the snap? Where's the... And Billy's the kind of wrestler that, you know, once in a while she'll pull out something. You'll be like, oh, this really rocks. And it'll be a standout moment in her match because the rest of the match is it's like, well, why aren't you striking faster, quicker, harder? She wants to be a striker. You can tell in the type of offense that she's doing, but she's got to be more snappy. She's got to be faster. She's lacking in speed. I don't know what it is, but you know. Anyway, Tony wins with the TCM chicken wing for the tap out, which is great. I love that she's calling the move the TCM chicken wing, and that she's a good opportunity to put it over, right? To get it over as a solid finisher as well, because the Storm Zero is nah. You know, she had to plonk Mercedes Moné 3 times on her head consecutively with one, and then later finish her off with an avalanche one to try and to win her match. Not exactly the strongest finisher on planet Earth. After the match, Billy Starks blasts Tony with the women's title. Athena then runs. Athena was up in the balcony that Tony was in last week. Athena was up in that balcony watching the match, enjoying it all, so on and so forth. And then she runs down to lay out Tony Storm with the metal contract gimmick. And then Alex Windsor comes in and she beats up Athena and Tony Storm because Alex Windsor is going to be challenging Athena for the Ring of Honor World Championship. Swerve Strickland defeated Hechicero via disqualification. You know, when we got into this match, I was excited. I was like, holy shit, this rules. But wait, these are two challengers right now. These are two people who are up next to challenge for belts. Swerve for the unified title and Hechicero for the Ring of Honor World title. Like, how are you going to squirm out of this one? And I kind of suspected they were going to do the DQ, and that's what they ended up doing. Look, this was fun. You know, Hechicero doing the grappling and Swerve being able to hang with them was really cool. Of course, before that, you had Don Callis putting Hechicero over. I forgot to mention that. Calling, Don Callis trying to speak Spanish, and so on and so forth. Another great performance by Don Callis, who might very seriously be the best non-wrestling on-screen performer that exists in pro wrestling in 2025. I don't see... You'd have to make a hell of a case to convince me of anyone else otherwise. Go ahead in the comments if you can. If you want to start talking about Paul Heyman, I will hand wave that, because Paul Heyman's a non-entity these days in that regard. Don Callis is fantastic. He's been absolutely fantastic. But yeah, the match itself, I thought it was a lot of fun. Swerve kept up and ran through his own shit. Does the 450 splash on top of that, and it all comes to an end when Lance Archer interferes very, very blatantly to cause a disqualification. After the match, of course, the Don Callis family beat up on Swerve, but then Bandito and Brody King run in to chase off the Don Callis family. Swerve seems to be getting back to his feet, but Kazuchika Okada shows up out of nowhere and attacks Swerve, but eventually does get run off by Strickland. And so we're continuing to reinforce that. It's good. Good little match, good little TV match. Hechicero, of course, as you may have heard, the reports going around is that he has a dual CMLL AEW contract. I'm going to talk about this more on stream tonight. We got a packed stream if you're listening to this on Thursday. There's a couple of things happening right now in pro wrestling that we're going to be covering. And I do want to talk about this because I think this is really big news. Bigger than what a lot of people are treating it as. But I'll tell you why later. But I think we're going to... Look, the point is that we're going to be seeing more Hechicero on TV, in AEW TV, which is fine by me, folks. I love Hechicero. Tremendous guy, tremendous wrestler, and I say tremendous guy as if I met him. I don't know the guy. Tremendous wrestler is what I meant to say. And just fantastic. That a guy just not that long ago was slumming it on the Mexican indies is now featured on Friday nights in Arena Mexico and being on national U.S. television, practically on a weekly basis. I think he's probably been on Dynamite or Collision. He's been on AEW programming every week since like 2 months now? I think he hasn't missed a week or something, right? Has to be. Maybe 1 week? Anyway, good match. Ricochet's backstage with the Gates of Agony. Oh, excuse me. The GOA, who are now wearing vests and dress slacks. It works. Yeah, I think it works. Don't get me wrong. I love the Gates with the the traditional war dress and whatnot. I thought that was very, very imposing, and I loved the idea of some kind of throwback to the Tongans back in the day. Not the Tongans, excuse me, the Samoans back in the day. I kind of like that. I really did. I dug it. I thought it was really cool and unique in 2025. This is what we're doing here. It's fine. It works with Ricochet. And, of course, Ricochet is being the little vermin that he usually is. And it's terrific. MJF gets into the ring and, he starts talking about how he doesn't need Bob to win his world championship. Of course, he's going to try and he's in typical MJF way. He's going to try and downplay what happened, right? Says he doesn't need Bob. But then Mark Briscoe comes out and calls Max a coward for what happened at the, for cheating him out of a victory at the Casino Gauntlet and asks for a rematch. MJF basically tells him no, and then continues to cut a promo where he also once again references Jay Briscoe. Now, I know the scuttlebutt. There's a lot of discussion going on as to whether it's in poor taste or not. It should be in poor taste. It's MJF. I don't know what to tell you. It should be in poor taste because it's MJF. And I'm going to tell you something else. I am not going to get more upset at people mentioning dead wrestlers as a way to get heat on TV if everyone involved is okay with it. If they're not upset, was what I'm trying to say. I'm not going to get more upset than they are. Knowing how Max is, there is 0% chance that he is dropping the Jay Briscoe references without clearing it with Mark first. Without Mark going, I'm okay with this. This is fine. There's no fucking way. Now, can we go too far in it? Can it get exhausting for the audience? Yes. And if anything, I think the limit has been hit in this circumstance. I wouldn't MJF, I wouldn't bring up Jay Briscoe next week or what. Not anytime soon. I just let that one rest a little bit because I think we hit the saturation point with the audience. There will be a time where it'll be okay to come back with it. Maybe in a couple of weeks, just not right now. Not next week. Maybe not. I'd give it a 2-week hiatus before talking about Jay Briscoe again. But again, like I can't get more upset than the wrestlers involved are, and they obviously are not upset. And I'm not going to waste energy on doing that. It seems counterproductive to me. It 100% seems counterproductive to me, and I don't see why anyone would be more upset than Mark Briscoe would be. You know what I mean? I don't know. That, of course, leads Mark to bum rush Max in the ring, but MJF escapes before they can, before any blows are exchanged, which leads to Mark Briscoe defeating Claudio Castagnoli, which I thought was a little surprising. You know, Claudio is not necessarily a guy who loses a lot, and he's been losing a lot recently. And I thought this ruled. This was a good kick-ass match, hard strikes, barricade bumps. Briscoe is doing all sorts of stuff off of the barricades on the floor. He's doing the cactus jack. He's doing the cactus jack elbows. He does all sorts of stuff, right? Claudio survives the froggy bow. Mark gets swung into the barricades by Claudio as well. But small package reversal gets the win for our boy Mark. But in the post-match, Marina Shafir attacks Mark Briscoe, and Claudio gets his revenge, gets his heat back by crushing Briscoe ribs first over a chair. And that leads us to the Hangman coming in, a situation, a promo that we've already talked about earlier, well, straight off from the get-go in this show. So there you go, in this review, in whatever the hell it is we're doing here. So there you have it. Last night's Dynamite. Good stuff happening. Very good wrestling. Solid evening of entertainment there on a Wednesday night as AEW continues its really good run of quality pro wrestling television. That's all there is to it. And as far as quality pro wrestling content from Mr. Warren Hayes, we're going to be back doing that. We're back tonight. If you're listening to this on Thursday, as I mentioned a few moments ago, we're going to be streaming this evening. Yeah, there's a big event happening in pro wrestling right now, well, we're gonna have to touch on it. So we're gonna talk about that tonight. We're gonna continue on with the reviews being back every Thursday. The Mr. Warren Hayes show back on Wednesdays. More reviews, stuff to there's a lot of stuff coming up. The G1, there's lots of things going on. So Warren is back. Don't worry about it. It seems all convoluted, and it is, because I haven't figured it all out yet. And I'll do what I'll do best. I'll figure it out as I go along. So hopefully you'll be along for the ride. Thank you very much for listening to this. If you want, you can leave a like or a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or a 5-star rating on Spotify. And that would be very much appreciated. Other than that, hope you all have a great rest of your week. Go watch some Randy Orton and get back to me. And I'll see you next time.